How to make paper beads for beginners. That's today's class. I'm Gail, Beaded Jewelry Diva, and today, like we said, we're going to be looking at paper beads, how to make them, what the supplies you need. These are the beads that we're going to be making in class, and towards the end I will show you some more advanced beads that we will make in a future class. But meanwhile, if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get started. Now let's go over the basics. You will need some paper. This is just some scrapbook paper. It's pretty thin, maybe 60 pounds or something like that. You can absolutely use something from a magazine or flyer, and I will demonstrate a bead with that. Here I have like an orange wood stick. You can use a bamboo skewer, let me say that right, a toothpick, and make sure it's round, not one of the square ones. You'll need an adhesive. I'm using Bearly Arts glue, but you can absolutely use something like Elmer's glue because I've used that. You will need something to cut with. You will see me demonstrate with a paper cutter, but you can also use scissors, or you can use like an X-Acto knife or something. I will also show you how to finish it off with nail polish. If that's all you've got, like I said, this is a beginner's class. So now that we know what we're going to do, let's get started. Now I'm using a paper cutter and I do recommend it. You can absolutely do this with scissors if you need to. But what I'm doing is I'm taking my piece of paper and I'm just using a piece of scrapbook paper. And what I'm doing is I'm aligning one end with the 1-inch mark, and I'm aligning the other end at the cutting line. And then what I will do is cut. And I have a perfect piece of paper for bead rolling, and this one is 1 inch. I'm going to cut a 3/4 inch and a 1/2 inch so you can see those sides of beads as well. So I'm going to show you the toothpick method of rolling beads first. I'm actually going to roll it on my little skewer, but I'm going to start it on my toothpick. And what I'm doing is I'm taking the very end of it and I'm rolling it over the toothpick. And yes, you can create your bead on a toothpick like this. I don't like to because it hurts my hands. But what it does for me is it gives me this little, hook. And that hooks beautifully over my skewer. So now, this is the hardest part, is the very beginning, is you have to hold it and roll it very carefully. Easier said than done sometimes. And especially since I haven't done this in a while on a skewer, you can tell that my end is a little bit off, but there, got it started. Now, when it comes to paper beads, a lot of people do like I do, and they roll it with the pretty side up, the side that they want to have displayed, or you can actually do it this way. So it doesn't really matter. Whichever way is easiest for you is the right way. So I'm going to do some more rolling. Oh, and the thing that you really want to keep an eye on as much as possible is keeping your strip of paper in between the ends. So keep it towards the middle. And sometimes it's difficult to see exactly where the middle is because maybe the color's on your paper. But just keep on rolling. Now that we've got just a tiny bit left, I'm going to put some glue on it. Whoopsie daisy. I'm going to put it actually on the on the tail of the bead. It's not going to matter that I got it a little bit on there, as you'll see in a moment. So we'll take that and carefully just try to put it in the middle of the bead, your end, and squish it down. So told you it wouldn't matter that I put a little bit on the bead. So just roll it around. Now, like I said, I'm using Bearly Arts glue. You can use Elmer's or any other kind of white glue. That's fine. I'm going to put a little bit extra on the bead It's messy, but we're crafting and having fun, right? And the reason that I'm doing this, as you'll see later on in the video, doing this beforehand, before you take it off your skewer, helps to keep your bead all in one place. Otherwise you could have some accidents like I did. So here, we've got it. Congratulations, you've made your first bead. So let this air dry for a moment or two. It usually just takes like a minute or so if you're using a white glue. Just let it air dry and then you can pop it off. And congratulations once again. Okay, here is a bead roller, and what it is it's a handle, and then it's usually a slotted tube. If you can see this, has a slot on one side in this particular case, although there are some with slots on two sides. But what you will do is take your piece of paper, slide it into the slot. Slide it into the slot like that. Hold it and start rolling. And you're off to the races. Okay, so here's my finished bead off the bead roller. Now, one thing I like to do when I'm using a bead roller is I let it dry a little bit on the roller before I take it off, because it's more securely on the roller than it was on like an orange wood stick or skewer or toothpick. So let it dry for a minute or so. Okay, so here's something that I cut out of my magazine. It is very, very thin paper and it's semi-glossy. It's not really glossy, but this makes it a little bit more difficult to roll just because it's thinner and slipperier. So here's how you do it with, and I'm going to demonstrate with the bead roller because the toothpick is hard on my hands. When it comes to bead rollers, whoopsie daisy. When it comes to bead rollers, I would suggest that you start out trying with whatever you have around the house first. Figure out if you like the bead roller before, or rolling paper beads before you go out and buy something like a bead roller. But if you enjoy making paper beads, I would absolutely recommend a bead roller. And I will have what I bought in my Amazon shop if you want to see it. But, you know, they have them on Etsy and everything like that too. So you see, I started it the same way, and I am rolling the same way. It is more difficult to start it because of the slickness of the paper, but you can roll a bead just the same way. Okay, here's something quick. You can see this is the paper bead I just made from the magazine, thin paper. And here's what I used with some scrapbook paper, and you can see a definite difference in how thick the bead is. So if you're using something like a magazine paper, you may end up wanting several layers just to get the bead to be the thickness you want. Or you can just go with a thicker paper in the first place and save yourself some trouble. But absolutely, again, you can use magazine, scrap paper, whatever. Now I've got my dried bead, and I am, yes, using the magazine bead for this, and I've got some nail polish. Now, while I don't necessarily recommend nail polish for if you want to continue making paper beads, you can absolutely use it to try it out. What I've done is I've just put this on a skewer, and I've got some, nail polish on it. Okay, I've got my bead in my bead roller and I'm starting to wrap it. And one of the common problems is that you aren't paying enough attention. You kind of end up going off center. How to fix it? Easy enough. You unroll to the last part where it was good, and then you start rolling again. Another problem you might see is that you've got one end that has that little extra piece of paper sticking out. If you see that, there are ways to fix it after the fact, but you might want to go ahead and start again. Another way of getting around those little ends sticking out is you can see that I've just taken the corners off this piece of paper. Now you might have a situation like this that happens. Whoops, the paper comes out. Now what you can do is you can try to hold it and wrap it, but sometimes that doesn't work either. So what I found is I just go ahead and fold it over just a tiny bit. Then I take my bead roller and I slide it in the slot, and that helps me to go ahead and just get it in place, and I can start rolling. Another problem you might have is when you go to pull it off, it slides. So you can see that the center has now slid over, and we've got a more bell-shaped bead or teardrop shape. So what you can do is you can try to slide it back some and center it, or you can go with the flow and take it off and have yourself a teardrop shaped bead. So either way, actually the teardrop looks kind of neat, so I'm going to keep it this way. Here's something that happens to me all too often. I'm getting ready to go ahead and put the glue on, and I grab it and I lose the hold on it. Well, the only way to really fix this one is to get it to the last tight spot and start rolling all over again. Now here's a problem you might have. You want to go ahead and embellish your bead or something towards the end, and it kind of rolls on your skewer or whatever you have. A way to fix that is just to grab some clear tape. I've used painter's tape before, and it just didn't seem to work as well. It doesn't grab the wood as well. But I'm just rolling it up, and you may need to use a couple of different layers of it, but that will hold the bead on more securely so that you can put your glaze on. Now here's something that you might see when you are using a bead roller. You see how that piece of paper is kind of curled in like that? What I do is I just take my little skewer, or whatever's the right size hole diameter, and I just run it through. And voila, it ends up being a lot more round. So what do you do when you actually have one of those little dog ears like that? Well, what you can do after the fact is take a emery board of some sort and very gently start swiping it across. Okay, as I promised, here are my first two paper beads. This one is my very first one. I rolled it on the skewer and I used magazine paper, and I think I ended up using 2 layers, but as you can tell, when I pulled it off, I pulled it off badly. Still makes an interesting bead, which reminds me, always save your first beads. It'll remind you how far you've come. So here's another paper bead I made. This is probably my second one. So now here are 2 other shapes of paper beads that you can make, and these are wrapped a little bit differently. They're cut a little bit differently, or they use more than one strip of paper like this one. You can make rounder looking paper beads. Here's one that's actually more of a disc or a saucer shaped. This one's getting rounder, and this one's more barrel, but I will show you in a future video how to make round beads. In another video, I will also show you how to put on these end grommets to make your beads look a little bit more sophisticated. Square beads, anybody? Yes, you can make square beads, and you can see this one is getting ready to be made into some jewelry, and I will teach you how to make square paper beads in a future video. Well, there's a little bit more to this video, so keep watching, but here are basically the beads that we've made in class or that I've talked about, and now we need to talk about making jewelry from paper beads, because you've got all the beads, now you need to do some jewelry, right? Alright, so this is Gail, Beaded Jewelry Diva, and keep watching for something else. And I'm wrapping it really, really tightly at first. And that didn't work. Darn, that didn't work. Yeah, okay, we didn't make all these beads in class. The problem might be that when you pull your bead off, and I actually had it right this time. So now here's a bead that is really ugly. Okay, let's forget this one. Stop. I didn't do that right. I want to go ahead and let it sit on the skewer, and we'll skewer it all up, I guess.